So Italy against England this weekend. The team news is in. England's opening trip of this Six Nations takes them to Rome, where I think it's going to be a sellout. Certainly not an easy game for them. But the teams have been announced. That's what I'm talking about in the video. Welcome back to the channel, and let me know in the comments down below, what do you make of the two teams that have been selected? How do you see this game going? Do you know what? The more this week has gone on, the more people I've seen or heard say that they think Italy could spring a surprise on England, and what an upset that would be on the opening weekend. Do any of you think that is going to happen? And explain to me why. So I'll start off with the Italians. Welcome back to the channel. New coach, first of all, Gonzalo Quesada, comes in post-World Cup. I think one of the most interesting things for him and his appointment is what style of rugby is he going to implement for this Italian team. Under Kieran Crowley, they were a team that pretty much ran it from everywhere, as close as you will see a team run it from everywhere at an international level. They had some brilliant results in that time. That victory over Wales, incredibly memorably, victory over Australia. But when it came to the World Cup, things just didn't go well at all. Will there be any sort of World Cup hangover, or is it going to be a continuation of what we saw previously under Crowley and the Six Nations last year, where they might not have won a game, but I remember covering a couple of their matches, the one against France, where it looked for a while that they could have produced a massive upset, Scotland on the final weekend as well, where you thought maybe they were going to win there as well. So which of those two Italys is it going to be, and what sort of style of rugby is Quesada going to implement? I think to a degree, and you look at this Italian side in particular, a pretty youthful and exciting backline, they will still try and use that attacking flair. I also think he will be more pragmatic than perhaps Italy have been previously. What does that look like? What impact does that have in terms of them getting results in this championship? Is certainly something to keep an eye on, and I think that will be quite fascinating. In terms of the squad itself, you've got the Garbisi boys at 9 and 10. I've seen quite a few Italian fans happy that Stephen Varney finds himself on the bench. It's interesting with Varney. He's a good player for Gloucester. I've never quite felt like you've seen him at international level and felt like he really looks comfortable there. Now, when you're playing for an Italy team that, when they come up against the top sides, are losing more often than they're winning, then it's difficult. But even so, I think Garbisi coming in and partnering his brother as well is going to be really exciting at 9 and 10. I think Capuozzo shifting from fullback to wing is interesting just in so much of can they get him on the ball as much as you can when he's playing at fullback, and how do they use him in that capacity? Because he's so dangerous, he's so explosive, he's such an attacking threat that how does that change how effective he is? I know he's played wing before. I quite like seeing him at fullback. And then also in terms of that back line, it's the return of Menoncello. And I know someone mentioned this in the comment section on a video I did the other day, suggesting that I was being harsh or sort of sleeping on Italy a little bit. I'm well aware that his return to that midfield is a really, really positive thing for this team. So how that back line goes is very, very exciting. And then I think you look at the starting 8 in the pack for Italy, and it's a good team. This is a good Italian team. You look at it on paper. The big questions, as I say already, are how do they play? What does that style of play look like? And does it get them into a position where some of those tight results that we saw in last year's championship, are they able to get themselves over the line? I hope so. I think all neutrals really want Italy to be successful in the Six Nations. The other factors as well to consider here, I think, looking on the eve of the tournament for this Italian side, first of all, what I mentioned, it's a big crowd. You feel like there is something building in Italy in terms of rugby. It has been a tough old road for them. There's been ups, there's been downs, there's been some great results. There's been some runs of losing a lot of games in this competition. But a big crowd, are they starting to believe? Do they get the sense that something special is going to happen? Because you could understand why they would think that. The under-20s have had consistently much better results in the under-20 Six Nations over the years. That generally is quite a good, it's not the be-all and end-all, but it's quite a good indication of how well a side is going to be 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years down the line if they have a very successful under-20 side. With that under-20 team doing better, what does that look like for the Italian national team? And then you've got Benetton as well. I listened to an interview, I think it was on the BBC rugby podcast with Gonzalo Quesada, where he spoke really interestingly about this. Benetton have started the season well. Now, in part, that's because of how well a lot of the non-Italian players are playing, but obviously there's still an Italian presence in that team. So does domestic form help influence the success at international level? Because if you look at Ireland with Leinster, France with Toulouse, England when they were successful with Saracens. You often rely on a bulk of players from a certain team. Could Benetton eventually get to the point where they're providing that for Italy? So let me know what you think of Italy. I'll move on to England and Steve Borthwick for what is a massive Six Nations for England. And when I look at this team, I'll get into some different talking points, but once again, I don't think it's so much about personnel for England as much as it is about style of play. England have good players to choose from. The question is, how does Steve Borthwick and that coaching group set them up, and what type of rugby do they want to play? The Six Nations last year was dull, frankly, but he'd only just come into the job. He'd had very little time training with the players. He was assessing what he had before the World Cup. And even at the World Cup, I think there was a sense of doing what they needed to do to get themselves ultimately to a semi-final, and then a semi-final they almost won in quite specific conditions that suited them. So it feels like a new era for England. It feels like a new era because of the players that are missing, not just Owen Farrell and Courtney Lawes, but if you look across that squad compared with the team that went to the World Cup, or on the eve of the World Cup, it's a very different squad overall. And I think there is this expectation that they will play different rugby. They will play a different style. It will be more attacking than previous. I think that is true. I don't think it is going to be the complete overhaul that many people are possibly expecting. I think it will still be tactical. This is still Steve Borthwick. He is a pragmatist. He is data-driven. So they will still have elements of that. I just hope we start to see more in an attacking shape that gets people excited, because if they display that, looking ahead to some of the fixtures they have coming up, with Wales the following week, with Ireland at home, if they show something that a Twickenham crowd can get behind, all of a sudden you might get the sense that the whole feel around this England team is starting to change. But I'll get maybe more onto that at the end of the video. I don't have a huge amount of complaints about this team, partly because of what's spoken about, and that I think it's more about style of play. But I just think it's a nice mix. I think there's a good mix of experience and youth. I think for an opening game of the Six Nations, even though some people will look at it and say, it's Italy, that is your best chance to rotate and give people full debuts, England still need to start well. Jamie George has spoken about this. England have started the Six Nations poorly over the last few years. He wants to take this team as the captain to Rome and make a statement on the opening weekend. And I think it is a team designed to do that purpose. In terms of some of the main talking points, fly half is going to be the big one. They've gone with George Ford. I said in a video the other day, I personally would have gone to Finn Smith because I think he looks ready for it, even though he is a debutant. And also because George Ford has been injured. His rugby has been stop-start with various injuries. I wondered whether Finn Smith has actually, in terms of been playing regularly and playing well, in a better place to come in and play fly half on the opening weekend. Having said all that, though, I don't have an issue with George Ford. He's so experienced. He is a very, very good player. I hope fitness and form-wise he is in position to go and do the job. But I was there in Marseille when he marshalled England against Argentina on the opening weekend of the World Cup and put in one of the great England fly-half performances at a World Cup. We know he's good enough, so therefore I'd have gone with Finn Smith. I don't have an issue that George Ford is the name that Steve Borthwick has decided to pick. Elsewhere as well, I spoke about it in that video the other day, the centres. Fraser Ding will debut, Henry Slade there as well. For me, it was the obvious choice. The problem is with no Ollie Lawrence, what does that centre partnership look like for England, both in attack, without that obvious ball carrier to get you over the game line, and also what does it do in defence as well, where you're just a smaller midfield? They're really good players. How does it work for England? That's certainly something that I'll be keeping an eye on, and I wonder whether that is an area that Italy will look at and say we could potentially exploit that, or is it people coming off their wing, or what do England do in terms of shape to deal with that? Delighted Sam Underhill is back, has had a torrid time with injury, was brilliant in the bronze medal match at the World Cup. When he is on form, when he is fit, he's an absolute game changer for England. So I'm pleased to see him there. I'm pleased to see Ethan Roots excited about him. The likes of Chandler Cunningham himself on the bench. Finn Smith I mentioned as well. I like this England team. I think it is a decent team. How they play is key. And it's a good mix, as I said already, of experience and of youth. So where do England go this Six Nations? Do you think that they could face a banana skin in Italy? It is a banana skin. I would back England to be able to get the job done. Those words could come back to haunt me, but it's just my gut instinct. I think they will win on the weekend. And I think we will see more than we have seen previously of a Steve Borthwick England team in terms of attack. I don't think it's going to be exactly where people want it to be, but for one game into a new season, I think we will see improvements. And yeah, I'm excited. And the big thing, one of the biggest things actually, is reconnecting with the England fans. Again, this is something that Jamie George has spoken about. They want to be an England team that the fans are proud of, the fans are proud to get behind, and that will make Twickenham a really difficult and horrible, potentially, place to come for visiting teams. It's become too easy. England have to start the Six Nations well. Italy off the back of the World Cup. As I say, is there a hangover, or actually was that almost the anomaly? This is a good Italian team, as I suspect it probably is, and they will be more competitive than people think. Let me know what you think. I look forward to reading your comments. I appreciate you watching the video. If you can like the video, it just gives it a little boost. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel as well. Enjoy the weekend. Let me know what you make of it. See you in the next one.